Funding for Elwood City Limits is brought to you by Shander LaFave Boughton, Christine Wong, Crescent Fresh, Dan Mike Dawson Silva, Emily K, Froppy, Ian Collis, Joe Sue, John Dulong, John Griswold, Leanne S., Light Relentless, Riley Stevens, Ross Ward, Sam Solero, Stella, and Teresa. Become our patron today and get access to all of our hidden content at patreon.com/Elwood City Limits.
You know, Will, I've been thinking.
Oh, really?
Instead of, Square Enix teaming up with Walt Disney to make Kingdom Hearts, what if Sora and Goofy and Donald and the gang, went to Elwood City?
Well,
you know what I mean. What do you think about that? What do you think about Gawrsh Buster? I don't know.
It sounds like you're sitting on found money there. I think that there's a real good vein that could be tapped. I mean, look, I know that this latest Kingdom Hearts 3 game, we're having to go to Pixar, we're having to go to some of the more modern Disney movies. We're going to run out of Disney movies at some point. So maybe what needs to happen is if Disney partners with PBS and we get some, like you said, Sora, Donald, and Goofy in Elwood City. Maybe we get
Oh, Sora! Mr. Ratburn's lost his heart, Sora. We have to get Mr. Ratburn's heart back. He's nobody now.
Oh no, he's not a nobody. Or did he get Norded?
Okay, see, I'm already out of my depth. The only things I know about Kingdom Hearts are via context clues and attempting to watch the lore YouTube videos over and over and over again. So you've already got me. I know you've played them, but I just know how to be like, oh no, Swellen's got the X-Blade, Sora.
You talk a good game. I figured you might have been one of the ones who I have a friend who was counting the hours until he could play Kingdom Hearts 3 on Monday evening. So, yeah, no.
No, I was looking at a picture today of Sora talking to Remy the Rat, and I think it broke my brain. Like, I think I look at it and I just disassociate. Like, I just can't comprehend what I'm looking at.
Yeah, it's pretty wild the places they're digging into now. Like I said, like Pixar, it's kind of wild to see like Toy Story in a video game besides their own video games. Yeah, Ratatouille.
Did you see that Onion article about like the Touchstone Pictures universe? Sora meeting Ernest?
No, I didn't. Who else does Touchstone Pictures have? Like
Whoopi Goldberg in the Sister Act. There was some choice characters for old Sora to meet.
That's funny though. I mean, it's a really and of course not to dunk on Kingdom Hearts too much. I feel like that's dominating the discourse.
Oh no. These jokes are all being made out of love and respect. I'm not beating a dead horse at all. I tip my hat to all the Kingdom Hearts fans out there. It's just very fun to talk and think about. Like, I just get happy when I think about it.
Yeah, and I just feel like a lot of the the discourse of like, oh, it's confusing and like, I don't understand it. It's kind of played out at this point. I'm more interested in people's genuine appreciation and fascination with the games rather than people just aggressively not understanding what's going on.
I would play them if I had more time, but alas, I have very little time. Today, I watched today's episode of to pull back the curtain a little bit here. I watched today's episode of Elwood's of Arthur in the common area of my college because I was so strapped for time. I had to do it on lunch break, and I could only imagine what all the other people thought I was doing on the work computers as I watched this episode of Arthur and took notes. Maybe they thought, hey, look, there's, city famous podcaster Lucas Van City, but I highly doubt it.
Well, I mean, hey, and of course, this is going to sound one way, but it's like, this is work in a way. I mean, we do have people who are chipping in a little
and
something.
I would be quick to tell anyone that if they were to comment on what I was watching. So,
welcome everybody. We are back once again for Elwood City Limits. This is the episodic Arthur podcast. My name is Will Young, and I can't say that I have been as busy as Mr. Lucas Mancini.
Hey, we're getting through it.
Big time. And, I mean, I've been a little busy on my own as well, kind of more with social obligations than anything else, which is weird to me. I'm used to just kind of, spending years hermiting up in my apartment playing video games, and I don't have as much time for that these days. I was actually just, the juice ran out of my controller as I was playing Resident Evil 2, so I have to let it charge before I can go back to it.
2019, you've cocooned into a social butterfly, it seems.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. There's perks now that I'm on the other side of the fence. There's perks to kind of being a bit of a loner, but it's probably for the best. So I'll just kind of go with the flow for right now. This is actually a rare week. We had a couple of weeks here where if you haven't checked them out yet, you can go onto our Patreon, patreon.com/Elwood City Limits, and get access to all the Fill-a-Busters, which we do during our off weeks where we're not able to record, talking about various subjects. And that's been kind of the main thing for the last couple of weeks. So it's good to get back to finally delving into more of Season 6. This particular episode, I feel, is one that a lot of people have been waiting for us to talk about for one reason or another.
It's funny. So my again, extra context. My classmates were asking me which Arthur episode I was watching because they know I do the podcast. Yeah. And when I started to explain it, I was surprised to hear that all of them remembered both of these episodes. Oh, which I had forgotten about the first one we're going to talk about.
Yeah, me too. I wasn't really certain, but boy, talk about life colliding with art. We'll get into it here. But it turns out that I've actually been preparing for this episode for a lot longer than I realized. And we also have a rare week here where we don't have any emails or instant messages. So remember, if you would like to get your feedback, your questions, your comments on Arthur, the show, or anything else read on the air, the best way to do that is elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com, but you can also go on to any of our social media platforms. And
what is this coming across my desk? Why, we have an email from Lucas Mancini in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. Lucas writes, "Hey Will, what Harry Potter house would the Arthur crew go into?
Oh, boy.
Thanks, love the show. Signed, Lucas."
Man, that Lucas, he always drops stuff onto our plates, and with the real heady questions here. I thought maybe,
I don't know why I could tell this from an email, but I bet that emailer was really handsome.
he had a very dashing turn of phrase.
Yeah, his prose made me feel like he had what? Okay.
All right, so let's get into it because of
the easy ones. We got easy ones. Muffy, Slytherin. Boom.
Yep.
Boom. Out of the park. Yep. Swish. Easy peasy.
Brain is Ravenclaw. Boom. Easy.
Oh my God. Does itself. I think, now it's getting, and that's where the easy ones end. I would say that, I think the shoo-ins for Gryffindor, we got, I think Fern is a good Gryffindor.
You think so? I was kind of waffling between Hufflepuff and Ravenclaw.
Oh, she's definitely more Ravenclaw than a Hufflepuff. Fern is not a Ravenclaw. If anything, Arthur and Buster might be the shoo-ins for Ravenclaw. No, Arthur's Gryffindor. Buster's definitely Hufflepuff.
Yeah, but Buster's a telltale Hufflepuff here.
Hufflepuff,
I'm going to say Francine is also a Gryffindor. I think that she embodies kind of the more, I guess, less positive aspects of a Gryffindor, as much as the positive ones too. That's the thing, is that, and especially through talking through it with my fiance Jenna, she's a huge Harry Potter fan, and so she kind of helped me to understand that, like, each house has its own kind of positives and negatives, because when you first encounter Harry Potter, it's like, well, Gryffindor's the good one, Slytherin's the evil one, and the other two are just kind of in the middle. But there is a certain kind of headstrongness to beliefs that Gryffindors can embody, and I feel like Francine is really that as well. Arthur is, I'd probably say, a classic Gryffindor just by virtue of being the main character. So I agree with you there.
Now here's something to unpack.
Yeah.
Binky, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Binky, if I was to say the Harry Potter character that reminds me the most of Binky, would definitely be one Neville Longbottom. Okay, and that would squarely place him in Hufflepuff now, wouldn't it?
No,
is Neville Longbottom?
Neville's a Gryffindor.
Oh, well, then there we go. Okay, that's where Binky
I
goes.
agree, because I think that there's an aspect of Binky's personality that exemplifies bravery. Like when you think about like, oh, he embraced the side of himself that likes ballet and classical music, and like granted he's kind of timid about it around his friends, but there have been points in the series where he's been very open about it. So I'd say the bravery aspect is kind of what puts him over into Gryffindor. Can we say DW is a Slytherin?
I feel like it's too early to say.
Fair enough. I would say...
I could say that Mr. Rapern, Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher, am I right?
Yeah, good call. And I'd say...
Oh, actually, no, I got it wrong. I got it completely wrong. So Mr. Rapern's the potions master.
Yes, yeah.
What's the teacher that you hate that always sings the songs in the other class?
Sings the songs in the other class?
Miss... like I Like Fudge and
Mrs.
Tingley?
Mrs. Fink.
Mrs. Fink is the Defense Against the Dark Arts teacher because it turns out she's evil all along.
She's a real Dolores Umbridge, that one. Okay, I'm making sure that we're run through the major characters before anybody yells at us. And of course, this is the kind of stuff that we encourage you to let us know about, like what you think. Where
do we get it wrong?
Yeah,
right into the Elwood City Limits email at elwoodcitylymits@gmail.com
and show your work. I think that we can say that. Okay. Let's get into this, because we're talking about an episode of Arthur that is very much based off of Harry Potter. What house would Prunella be in? Because she's the main character of this episode.
Oh, what house is Luna Lovegood in?
She's also in Gryffindor.
Is she? I thought she was a.
I'm pretty sure.
A Pufflepuff.
Pretty
Lovegood. Let's check the Pottermore house. Luna Lovegood house, because it's whatever one Luna Lovegood's
Oh.
in.
Yeah, okay, I was wrong.
Oh, she's a Ravenclaw.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, that makes more sense. I'd say Prunella is probably also a Ravenclaw. She's very studious. She's also very adept with like oh my gosh, I just finished Prisoner of Azkaban. The subject that Professor Trelawney teaches is it's like the one where you use like divining and crystal balls and stuff like that.
Let me tell you something. I am of no help here. Much like Kingdom Hearts, I am way above my pay grade. So
by the way, still going through the Harry Potter books, still very good. I'm having a great time. Sorry, this is just going to bug me. Professor Trelawney was the divination teacher. So Prunella is a natural divination student, and I'd say probably a Ravenclaw as well, just because of how studious she is. Although wouldn't put out a Slytherin candidacy for her either, depending on how she acts in this episode. So yeah, this one is Prunella's special edition, and I'm really looking forward to talking about how this kind of relates to the real world. It actually starts off with Prunella kind of going through what feels to me like an adventure game.
Yeah, I wrote down Prunella is playing Dark Souls with the strategy guide, because she's basically counting paces in this kind of labyrinthian I don't even know what to call
dungeon.
it. Well, it goes from it's very like Dungeons and Dragon-esque in that it goes from like a big like library to a cave to like a treasure room, if you will, or a room with like magical artifacts, and she's sort of following like these instructions, like 10 paces north, do this, do that. So yeah.
Very dark.
There's also the other thing that made me think of it, Dark Souls, is that there's this weird. So I think we're in season 6, correct?
That's right.
In season 6, they've added a lot of. We talked about in previous episodes. They've added new sound effects. You know, Arthur's sort of infamous for reusing the same sounds. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But they've added a lot of new sounds. But they've also added, I think, new music.
Yes, I have
to the show.
Yeah, I have a note here about that as well. Specifically to this episode is where I noticed it in.
Mm-hmm.
And
so I was watching this in the common area. I was wearing my friend's headphones, and I noticed during this scene there's like a weird like choral chanting, and that's also very Dark Souls-esque.
Yeah, you're right. And of course, you can spec into like kind of a wizard type class in Dark Souls,
yes,
right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, definitely. It's hard, but you can.
Yeah, so that's what Prunella's probably doing. Maybe the reason why all these disparate like rooms and stuff are together, maybe it's like Dark Souls 2, where like the architecture you could argue is supposed to kind of not make sense. It's like you go from a lava world into a castle and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so she's making her way through this. It's just a bunch of kind of, magic-based scenarios. She's got like a magic wand. She has a magic carpet that she uses too. And it's meant to essentially get us in the mind frame of the world of the magical world we're about to enter in this one. And at the very end, she finds a book that she's been questing for, but then the pages are all blank. And there's a picture of all of the main cast dressed as wizards, and they start laughing at her.
Yeah, that picture is very, it's a rich vein for meme material. Like, if you could post that and be like, the post below you is making the wizard Arthur crew laugh, or like they're shaming the post below you, because they really, oh my goodness, I'm watching it now and they're just like really having a good chuckle.
That's a great idea. That's a great idea. I'm stealing that caption for this week. Thank you. Yes. So right away we get into the fact that the kids are lined up at a bookstore for a midnight release of a very popular kids novel called Henry Screever.
Now, Will, I know you're reading Harry Potter now, and you are a big Harry Potter fan. I myself am not a huge Harry Potter fan, but of course I've read some of the books when I was a little kid, and I've absorbed most of it from cultural osmosis. I have to ask, have you ever been to a Harry Potter release of a new book? Because believe it or not, I have.
Oh.
I was dragged to by a friend of mine at the time, and this is a very Lucas Mancini story. People were, it was at the local Chapters, which for you Americans is a Canadian bookstore. It's kind of like Barnes and Noble, and they had like stations where people were making wands. They had there was cosplay. There was all these activities, and while everybody was excited waiting for the book and doing all that stuff, I just sat in the manga section and read manga the whole time for 3 hours while they waited for the Harry Potter book to come out. So what about yourself? Have you been to a Harry Potter big release?
So personally, no, I have not. So first of all, Jenna has been to one, and she kind of told me, I believe it was for the very last book. She went to a midnight release party for that, and had a good time, all this kind of stuff. But my mother would get me the books when they were in release week. And because that was a really interesting time to be a kid during. And I'm sure you can attest to this as well, Lucas, even if you weren't the biggest Harry Potter fan. I just have a note here. So they're lined up for a book called Henry Screever and the Cabbage of Mayhem, on obvious Harry Potter knockoff. So by this point, this episode was released in late 2001. Harry Potter fever had definitely already come to North America. The books were super popular, and they were being released at about a rate of one every year or 2 years or something like that. The Goblet of Fire was released in the year 2000 in the USA. It was the first time they released that book at the very same time as they did in Great Britain. It used to be that over in England, they would release the book, and then a year later, America would get it. But by the time the third book came out, it really started to catch on. And so now we were in full-blown, like you said, midnight release parties. And, kids, there's a whole theme throughout this episode of kids, speed reading the book to keep their lead and to kind of keep up. It's basically what watching a Netflix series is right now, of just oh, which episode are you on? Oh, I'm on episode 6. Well, I'm on episode 5. But it was all to do with kids literacy. So it was a really interesting time to be a kid or to be a parent.
Yeah, that's one thing, I guess, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but one thing I do really like about this episode is how it illustrates the joys of reading and the joys of reading as a group. It's something that unless you're in a book club as an adult, you don't really get to experience so much, but a lot of my friends right now are kind of doing a book challenge where for 2019 they're trying to read a certain amount of books before the year is over. One of them is trying to read 50, and the other one's trying to read 75, which is quite the undertaking. That's more than a book a week, significantly more than a book a week, actually. but they're both on track to doing it, and it's really interesting to hear them talk about like, oh, I'm reading this book this week, or I'm reading this book this week, and this episode kind of reminded me that of like, oh, like talking about reading all at the same time is a really kind of magical, not to be too on the nose here, but magical experience. And I do like how this episode sort of as a set dressing, it's not really the point of the episode, but as set dressing kind of illustrates the fun of reading with your friends.
Yeah.
It's a very Arthur topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And you figured at some point that Arthur would have to tackle this, and they do it very directly. It's a big part. Like, they have their own sort of in-universe canon for the Henry Screever series. Like, throughout the episode, everybody's like, oh, remember when this happened to Henry? And it's like, it's all kind of sort of based on stuff that happens on the books, but also pretty original. A lot of it like food-based as well. So for people who weren't around or maybe just weren't old enough by the time those books were coming out, it was huge. Like, I would be basically from the 4th to the 7th book, my memory of those books are really patchy, because the thing to do would be to read it as fast as you could so your friends didn't spoil it for you, and so you could talk about it with your friends. And that's why I'm rereading them now, so I can take them a lot slower and actually kind of appreciate more of what's going on. It really was the only time in my life I can really remember like binge reading something for the sake of just purely getting the information. And of course, this was before Wikipedia. It was before like you could look up summaries of books online, so I couldn't even do that. Anyway, it really kind of brought me back in a fun way, and just kind of remembering how big of a part of kids' lives that was for many, many years. And then after the books were done, then the movies were after that, or at least around the same time. So, and I mean, Harry Potter's still very popular today, what with those Fantastic Beast movies, although depends on how you feel about those, whether or not they kind of measure up to the original Harry Potter.
Before we move on from the greater Harry Potter conversation, I just need to say this to get it out of my brain. Sure. What if Sora and the gang went to Hogwarts? You know what I mean? Gawrsh, Sora, I wonder what house I'm gonna be in. Like, Donald Duck is a certified Slytherin, let me tell you.
100%. Goofy, I'd say, is probably a Hufflepuff, and Sora's a Gryffindor.
Exactly. I was gonna try and do a Donald Duck, but I'm pretty sure I can't. It's like, oh god,
that's actually pretty good. Like,
well, I didn't say any words, but yeah,
it's like a frustrated Donald Duck. Like, I don't even try. Like, I think one time when I was a bit younger, like, I got the Donald Duck voice first try, and I've never been able to replicate it. There's a whole trick to doing it that I don't understand.
Jeez, Hagrid, the Heartless are storming Hogwarts' doors.
Yeah, I mean, hey, depending on how Lord Disney is doing these days, it may not be long before they completely assimilate Warner Brothers into their canon. The kids are all very excited. They're at the midnight release for Henry Screever, but they keep saying that Prunella isn't there, who is apparently the biggest Henry Screever fan of the entire group. And she is at home kind of, again, playing around in the same costume we saw in the cold open. And she has a very special edition of the Henry Screever book, again, and the Henry Screever and the Cabbage of Mayhem that is being mailed to her, so she doesn't even have to go to the midnight release. And I got to say, Prunella, as being a fan of this book series, like as being a huge fan of this book series, makes a lot of sense for her character.
Yeah, and also I do want to say, like, I've been pretty critical of Prunella up to this point, but she's not that bad in this episode. Like, I definitely think that, like, she's still not my favorite character, but like the negative aspects of her are pretty toned down, except for the part where she's like bragging about how cool her book is to all the other kids. But she kind of gets her just desserts for that fairly quickly. So I think there's a part where
no, it's all right. I was just going to say, I think Prunella is an interesting character to keep around, because with a lot of the kids so far, we've kind of seen their characters go through ups and downs, but Prunella has kind of more fertile ground. Like, she has room to grow as a character and as a person, and we kind of see both sides of her in this episode. So I think there's still room for us to grow to appreciate her in a better way. It doesn't mean that we necessarily have to like her, but there's at least a lot more room to bring more depth to her character than we've seen so far.
It's true. There's high hopes for Prunella. She could always turn out to be a Binky, or the other side of that coin, she could turn out to be a Muffy, who is essentially a stagnant character that never changes or learns her lesson.
Yeah.
So she's so excited for this book. She's going to school and she daydreams that it's the Hogwarts stand-in. Which, did you happen to pause?
I did.
When you see the crest, because it says Pig-Blisters, School of Charms, Tricks, and Spells. And then it says in Latin, Scientia Veritas, cake.
Yeah. So it's like I want to say like science, truth, and cake.
Yeah.
So I
assume this is a callback to whenever the pig in the mall that's eating the big piece of cake that DW always pictures Arthur as.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Must be like a brand or something. Yeah, we get a couple of so we get the direct reference from Pig Blisters to Hogwarts. There's also Mr. Ratburn shown driving a flying car, like in the second book, and it getting tossed around by the Mangling Maple, which is a stand-in for the tree in Hogwarts, the Whomping Willow. So I appreciated that as somebody who has read the books.
There's also a weird, creepy, pig with bumps on its back. It's got a dinosaur tail, and it's a pig, and it's also got wings, and it's being walked by the groundskeeper.
Yeah, it's some kind of weird Full Metal Alchemist chimera going on here.
It's funny you mentioned that. I'm watching Brotherhood right now for the first time. I've only ever seen the original series, and that's a good call.
Jen and I are watching the original series right now. I showed her the first episode of Brotherhood, and she was like, I don't really know what's going on. And I'm like, okay, well, let's watch the first episode of the original one. She's like, oh, okay, I understand things a lot better. So I was like, all right. In order to get to one, we have to go through the other.
I mean, the second episode of Brotherhood kind of... it's just, for some reason, it just starts, it does the thing where it's we don't want to start people with all the boring introduction stuff, so we're going to start with, a little mini-story. Mm-hmm. But even I, who had watched the original series, was, a little bit confused. I was like, wait, don't they meet all these people way later? But I feel like the second episode of Brotherhood is basically the exact same as the first episode of the original series.
Yeah, but I agree, and I just think it's so far much more effective for Jenna to kind of discover it this way. They are more upfront with the explanations. Then when you get into Brotherhood, there's still a lot left to offer because, of course, there's the ending is different. Basically the second half is much closer to the manga and everything. So there's still a lot there. I'm looking forward to going through both with her. This is my second time through both series. I will say I really appreciate that the writer of this episode really had to do a lot of work in order to make things close enough to Harry Potter, but not exact. We get parodies of stuff, with Pig Blisters, but then there's other stuff that he makes up, the Chimera thing, the Pig Blizzard, and all the other stuff. So some of it is parody, some of it is original, and I gotta believe that's gotta be tough.
So this next scene, we get basically it's Marie Kondo's worst nightmare. Muffy is Prunella's the only one who doesn't have her Harry Screever book or Henry Screever book because she basically doesn't have Amazon Prime, and she's waiting for her special edition to come on order. And then we get this little bit where Muffy has bought 3 copies of the book.
Oh, man.
And it's like when people buy the special edition of a video game just to keep it in the plastic wrap and then buy another one just to play. And yeah, this would send shivers down Marie Kondo's spine. I doubt all 3 of these books bring her joy.
Yeah, it's like a friend of mine who has 3 different copies of Star Fox 64.
Oh, yikes.
And just over different systems and everything. And I mean, I'm guilty of that too. I have bought at least 2 copies of Resident Evil 4 over various systems as well. So I'm certainly not clean either. But yeah, this was of course twisting the knife in of how rich Muffy is and how her daddy bought her all this stuff. In fact, she even has she shows off some merch she has. She has a Henry Screever watch, and she says it even talks.
This is a fun, comic book guy moment with Prunella where she's like, actually, this is obviously, a fake watch. It doesn't make sense with the canon.
I love what the watch says. It's just, I'm Henry Screever. I'm on your wrist. We're friends. So deadpan. Yeah, Prunella is, the lesser side of her in this episode is that she's really kind of a jerk about being a fan of Henry Screever. which of course every fandom has them, unfortunately. But she's
she's very much like, oh, you like Henry Screever? Name 5 of his albums. Like it's very like that kind of vibe.
Yeah, so that's the real drag of it all. But she races through the rest of the day. She's so excited to get her book. We even get a cutaway here where Prunella is playing soccer and imagines that she's playing the Henry Screever version of Quidditch, which is called Soupage. And it's
Soupage, and they're getting this is part. I remember what you said earlier about how the writer makes up, like, kind of combines Harry Potter stuff with original stuff, and this part is really, like, the imagery here is really crazy. It's like all these floating vegetables, and they're on magic carpets as the stand-in for the brooms. But just, like, what a strange image, like all of these vegetables sort of like floating in zero gravity. And instead of a snitch, they're trying to get a bouillon
cube. I thought this was very imaginative, and if there seems to be a food theme with Henry Screever. Like later on, it's like, oh, his nose turns into a cucumber or something like that, and
something in a kumquat.
Yeah, it turns into a kumquat. All this kind of stuff. So Soupage as a game was a pretty funny parody of Quidditch. So Prunella gets home after school finally, and she unwraps her book, but it turns out it's a Braille edition of the book that it seems was accidentally sent out.
Yeah, so later on when she calls the publisher, they said that...
I'm sorry to interrupt you. She calls the publisher in New York office, and did you catch this? The secretary's name is Dora Yonkers.
Oh, no, I did not notice that. That's interesting. Yeah, she sort of has that, like, the lady from the Ghostbusters secretary accent.
We got one! Dora Yonkers.
There's also a funny, like, almost Simpsons joke where when she's reading out the message that came with the book, Prunella is, it's like, it goes into all this detail about, like, how, like, it's thank you for buying this book, signed, like, the specialty edition of the publisher. Like, right. Because, of course, only, like, the specialty edition would put out the Braille version. It was a funny, like, very dry joke in the middle of the episode. But yeah, she calls Dora Yonkers and then is sad to learn that, well, she's happy at first that it was a clerical error and she will get the correct copy, but it won't be coming for another 3 weeks because, again, she did not pay Jeff Bezos his blood money and does not have Amazon Prime.
And Dora Yonkers is, of course, filling in for Marie Staten Island. So she's going to have to wait a long time before she can read Henry Screever, so everything serves to haunt her of how much she can't read her favorite book series and how she'll be behind in the conversation. I noticed here there's a lot of classical music pieces in this that they kind of repurpose.
Hall of the Mountain King. They use a refrain of Hall of the Mountain King, and it shows up throughout the episode.
And this is where Prunella's nastiness about the fandom comes back to haunt her, because earlier she said, like, maybe Muffy should read Pretty Rainbow, Pretty Colors to kind of insult her, and then they kind of turn it back around on her when Prunella literally begs for one of Muffy's copies of the book. Because she's she's begging it from a character I like to call Merch Muffy.
Muffy is really decked out to the nines in her Henry Screever getup. Like, she's got a full print graphic tee. She's got the snapback. She's got a
lunchbox, a double-sided lunchbox,
a flag, like vegetable themed sunglasses.
Yeah, no, I mean she's. Again, another type of annoying fan is the one who buys everything and has the money to buy everything. But of course, they are who keep the machine running. Prunella's trying everything she can to think of to get the book. She's trying the library. She asks Frank.
Okay, yeah. Are we going to talk about AskFrank.com?
We are.
Or .net, excuse me. It is AskFrank.net. I was going to do this on the air, but let's see if I get a virus. AskFrank.net.
So Ask Frank, for anybody who doesn't know, is a parody of a search engine called Ask Jeeves, which was very popular, at least for me, when I was in like junior high. And it was like you would form your searches in the form of a question, and there would be like this electronic butler. And I think you could still go to Ask Jeeves, but it's a very archaic type of search engine when you have like Google or, God help you, Yahoo.
Whoa. Okay, Ask Frank does actually exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty crazy. It brings you to this HTML graphic. It's just rotating this video where it says Ask Frank, Twitter, Pinterest, social media. It's all flying at the screen. Facebook local SEO, Google.com, more. All these buzzwords are flying out at me. What can we help you with? Branding, SEM, social, Google. What? Oh, okay. Now there's a city. Okay.
Sounds like,
it says,
sounds like you're being sucked into Tron World.
Destined SEO, admin at AskFrank.net. This is, oh my God, I got to get out of here. Okay.
Oh, man. No, now I'm in it too.
Oh, yeah, it's like, nowhere does it say what Frank actually is. It's just like sending the buzzwords at
Kinetic
you.
topography, man. Somebody must have done this for their friggin' community college project. We get a line here, and this is also another Harry Potter fandom reference. Prunella says aloud, like, "Oh, now I know how Persephone felt in the something or other, like part of a book." And then Ratburn connects her and says, "It's actually Persephone, like the I think the Greek god. I forget which pantheon Persephone's in, but that's also again something that Jenna brought up to me that." You kind of weren't sure how to pronounce some of the characters' names until you like heard them in the movie. So, and especially for me when I was reading the Harry Potter books, of course we know now it's Hermione, but when I would read it, it was it's Hermione, and I was not alone in that. Like nobody really knew how to pronounce Hermione until the movies.
That's I might not be as cultured as yourself, Will. To have had that problem with the Harry Potter books, but trust me, I am a literary man, and I had a similar issue with the I don't know if you know this series. It's a pretty if you're someone who is an academic who studies literature, the Bionicle books. I would never heard them say like the Makota.
Right.
And all of those, the Bionicle races and names, I've never heard them said out loud until I saw the CGI films that were adapted.
A lot of apostrophes, as I remember, in those Bionicle names.
I see. I'm scared to even attempt to try and say one as a joke because I have a friend, believe it or not, who is still very, very, very much into the Bionicle lore. And if you ever talk to him about it, he will then talk your ear off for 45 minutes. I love this about him because who else can I go to for all of my Bionicle lore needs? Yeah, I don't want to misspeak about this in order to avoid angering him.
Fair enough. I mean, hey, it takes all kinds this crazy world. And who am I to say? I watch Kamen Rider, so I know a thing or two about complicated lore.
Wouldn't want to anger the Tahu?
The Toa?
The Toa? Oh my God! Thank you.
So I read the Bionicle comics in my lifetime. So back when those first came out, again, that would probably have been around the same time as here. Man, just revisiting my childhood. That's what this podcast is all about. So Prunella sees no other option but to learn how to read Braille, and she is able to recognize the letter X after deep intensive study, and then she just decides to give up and wait for the book. But then she collides into who I believe is going to be a semi-regular character. Her name is Marina. She's a bunny character, and she's also blind. She walks with a cane. I feel like there's probably a better word for it, but
what is it? A white cane, a seeing eye cane?
Yeah, the same thing that Matt Murdock has. So Prunella, accidentally runs in. They accidentally run into each other, and Marina immediately realizes, because she can read Braille, that she's got the new Henry Screever book, and it turns out that Marina is a huge fan as well. And Prunella is very defeated at this point, and just decides, you can have it.
Yeah, her reasoning behind this is absolutely insane. She says, because sorry, what is the new character's name?
Her name
again?
is Marina.
Marina. Okay, I thought it was that. It's kind of I wonder what origin Marina is. That's not a name you hear that often. Anyway, Marina offers to read it to her, and then initially Prunella refuses because she likes to do all the voices out loud, which is insane to me. That's nutty.
I kind of like to do the voices out loud too.
What? It would take so long.
Okay, but so I don't do it for all of them. But sometimes I'll read a passage of a book, and for me, I have, certain voices in my head, and I'm talking about reading Harry Potter here. The movies have come out, and we already have, like, a lot of very iconic performances. So, of course, every time I read Snape, it's Alan Rickman. Every time that I hear Hagrid, it's Robbie Coltrane. And so when the mood strikes me and we've got, like, a big Snape passage, then I put on my best Alan Rickman and just give it a whirl. It's fun. It's fun.
You know what? Glass houses shouldn't throw bricks. I'll do Kingdom Hearts voices all day long. So who am I to judge? Oh gosh, nearly headless Nick is at it again. Sora.
Oh, Peeves is really causing trouble.
Oh,
I hear Mickey's voice and
Gawrsh Goofy. Moaning Myrtle's Gawrsh, like
Moaning Myrtle is Gawrsh. Yes. So Marina at least decides to read Prunella's Braille book, and then Prunella kind of hears her reading it, and then it's just like, no, please tell me what's happened. So she actually we fade cut to pretty much the end of the episode here, as the Arthur crew are saying that they're all done reading the book and they can't wait for the next one, which comes out in another year. And they kind of look at Prunella and just like, do you think she's read the book? Knowing her, she probably already has the next Henry Screever book. But it turns out that she's still on her way through it, but she has made a new friend. She has Marina over to her house to read it to her, and they kind of hang out. And Marina is in future Prunella episodes. I know that much. So, and we don't really get a great sense of any character yet from Marina, but she does seem very nice. And I think that this is a really interesting wrinkle to add to the story of just having somebody who is blind on the at least supporting cast, and I hope we see her more.
Yeah, it's good to see a character introduced who's not going to be joining our great Hall of Fame of the throwaway character of the week. It's nice to know that she actually sticks around. I was worried we weren't going to have a throwaway character of the week this week, but luckily, and we'll see if you can spot them, Will, we at the 11th hour, we're introduced to one. So keep an ear out for that.
Well, before things start talking that shouldn't talk, let's throw it to a word from us.
And now a word from me, Lucas Mancini of Elwood City Limits. Don't forget to chat with your Elwood City Limits pals on social media with facebook.com/Elwood City Limits or at ECL Podcast on Twitter. We also have a Tumblr, elwoodcitylimits.tumblr.com, and an Instagram at Elwood City Limits. If you want to send us a question, send us an email and get it read on the show at elwoodcitylimits@gmail.com. You can find the entire episode archive at elwoodcitylimits.libsyn.com or on your favorite podcast service. If we aren't on your preferred podcast app, let us know, and we'll do our best to get on it. Thanks as always for supporting us here at Elwood City Limits. Now, back to the show.
And we're back. Let's do this. It's The Secret Life of Dogs and Babies. This is the one that people have been looking forward to us talking about, and for very good reason, I'd say. And man, it starts off hot. Well,
I was going to say, me included, I've been looking forward to this episode for a while. It's one of those episodes where you say the title, you know exactly what it is.
Yeah.
But boy, did I not remember it started with this. So this is this is crazy. This is wild. It's even more so, Arthur's not new to parody. I mean, we just talked about an episode that's got a bunch of Harry Potter parody in it. There's of course the contest episode with all those parodies, but this one's this is just insane.
It's been a real theme as we go deeper into the show, how the writers, and I'm sure the animators too, really like parody. And they really like to kind of put their finger on the pulse. Now, this may have been a little bit past this particular show's kind of time in the limelight, but the episode starts off with what I would say is a pitch-perfect parody of the Nickelodeon show Rugrats. It literally starts with, it's meant to be, Arthur and DW watching this on the TV, and we get essentially the Rugrats characters if they were in the Arthur universe, and with minor name changes. But you can tell it's Tommy Pickles, Chucky, Phil and Lil, and Angelica, except in this one, Angelica is Veronica and Tommy is Bucky. and their designs are unmistakable, and I think.
Can I also say I love. They're all so cute. Like the Tommy Pickles dog is like adorable. Bucky almost won the throwaway character of the week this week. But I'm a big Bucky fan. But yeah, this was great. And also like it does the thing where it's the warped, and they actually utilize this technique later on in the episode, but it does the thing where it's like kind of the warped perspective where everything looks huge and like bendy and weird because it's supposed to be from the kid's perspective.
And I mean, they really replicated this in the Arthur style quite well. I agree. I like the Chucky. I don't know what his name is, but he's pretty cute too. But of course, it would be impossible for them to really replicate the Klasky Chupo style of animation, or at least it would be really intensive. Like in the
they did it once with the. Was it Dr. Katz? Remember when Arthur parodied Dr. Katz?
Yeah. I just feel like the Dr. Katz animation is different enough from Klasky Chupo where and I mean, maybe it was the same animation house. I really don't know. But there's a je ne sais quoi about the way that Rugrats was animated that I feel like would be really hard to replicate one-to-one. So I think doing it in the Arthur House style is a pretty good compromise. The music sounds pretty similar too. Like a lot of the Rugrats music was like kind of almost like the music from Doug. Like they almost sound like mouth.
I was
like
as
sounds.
you were looking for like the word, you were like, it's kind of, I was gonna say really really good. Is that the word you're looking for? Certified slappers, if you will.
It is good. It is good music for that show specifically. But I think they did a pretty good job of like capturing the spirit of it a little bit, if not doing it complete justice. Anyway, loved this opening, and then it just. And then it gets wild.
So before we move on, we talked a lot about Harry Potter. Are you a fan of Rugrats, Will? Did you like the old rats back in the day?
I loved Rugrats back in the day. It was like one of the premier cartoons that YTV would have, which is the main kids channel up here in Canada. And yeah, I would watch Rugrats every day. I don't know. It's almost something that. Looking back on it, it's not like other cartoon series where I look at it and like, man, that was one of my favorite cartoons. But it was so reliably entertaining, and I think it was just the combination of the kind of babies as characters put together with some really like maybe not like gross subject matter, but they weren't afraid to kind of appeal to kids' sensibilities, and I feel like that made it really watchable. And
it also had some pretty good adult humor too, though, like stuff like, and you could see it in how like it's been memified since, but like the stuff with like Stu Pickles and the adults is like very very funny and continues to be funny to this day, and also like gave me like a couple of the episodes gave me straight up nightmare fuel for ages. Like some like Rugrats, just because of the way that it looked and kind of the concepts that it would have in some episodes, like was really scary. Like there was that episode where like Angelica imagined what it would be like if her mother had another baby, and the baby is like this huge, like drooling man. It's so disgusting. Or like what was the other one? Like where Tommy and Chucky imagined going to a job. And the ending of that is really scary. I forgot about that one. I remember that.
Where it's like their arms extend out, and it's it freaked me out as a kid. But I still loved watching it. So go figure.
Yeah, unlike Arthur, I guess I don't really think about Rugrats too much. But now that we're talking about it, like I really liked it as well. I had the Rugrats Go to Paris VHS tape that was orange.
The orange one, yeah.
Yeah. I also remember. Do you remember All Grown Up?
I do, yes.
I even liked All Grown Up. I think it's an interesting idea to be like, okay, we're going to check back in with these babies now that they're teenagers and see how their kind of relationships and personalities have changed from being literal infants.
I think at the time that All Grown Up came out, I was kind of past it. I forget what I was watching around that time, like probably moving on to anime and stuff like that. So I think at that point I kind of outgrew Rugrats even as they got older themselves. Anyway, very, very reliable show. If you haven't watched Rugrats in a while, like search it up on Google, check out an episode. It's probably just as good as it was then. One of the rare shows that you can say that about. So we go from this. Arthur, DW, Kate and Pal are watching this, whatever they would call their Rugrats parody. And Kate just starts talking.
Yeah, Kate's just a little Gabitha. And then, in turn, Pal starts talking back in a British accent.
Okay, so all right. So first things first, their voices. Let's start with Kate. So Kate's got this very kind of sophisticated older white lady voice. She talks very properly and succinctly. She's also very philosophical, as we find it in this episode. She's very intelligent. I actually liked Kate's voice here. I think that's kind of a fun direction.
I like Kate's voice as well. I think it's really, and it's very funny. Like, it's very distinctly an adult woman's voice. Like, it's not like any of the other Arthur characters where they're attempting to sound like children. Like, it's just like an adult woman talking, which I think makes a contrast. It's very much like Look Who's Talking style comedy, where it's like, oh, here's this baby that's talking like a person.
Now, Pal's voice, I gotta say, when I saw this the first time when I was, much younger, I would have been probably 11 years old. And, growing up with Pal, like literally growing up with Pal over the years of just like, he's Arthur's dog, he's loyal, he's all this kind of stuff. You already kind of have a character in mind for who Pal is. Even just watching it through here, it's like you get the sense of who Pal is. And then you give him, like you said, it's kind of a bit of a stuffy British voice.
Do you know if it's Mr. Ratburn's voice actor? It kind of sounds like Mr. Ratburn's voice actor putting on a British accent.
It does kind of sound like him, doesn't it? But I don't know. I'm going to have to look that up real quick here. But I got to say, I don't like Pal's voice. Like, I didn't like it then, and I don't like it now.
Now, Will, I would tend to agree with you. Back in the day, I was perturbed because Pal is like a cute, fuzzy creature, and I feel like in popular culture, we kind of want those to sound a certain way. But I bring this piece of evidence to the jury.
Go ahead.
Are you familiar with a series of films called Paddington?
Yes, I've seen them both.
Okay. Now, Paddington Bear, he's cute and cuddly. You'd think he'd sound like, kind of like a cute, cuddly guy, but he kind of just sounds like a British man.
Okay, but...
And that has warmed me to the idea of... because it just kind of reminded me of Paddington 2. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this voice isn't so bad.
But the difference there is that Paddington is a quintessentially British property. So, like, it's you watch those movies, you read those books, it is British to the core. This is very much a different situation where it's like, I don't understand the context of Pal being British. Like, it's just kind of seems like a decision to offset the fact that he's like this kind of cheerful, excitable dog, and then just have him be like a sort of an uptight British man. It doesn't work for me, and it really changes the way that I look at Pal, and it's kind of too bad. I mean, I understand what they're going for in terms of effect, but I don't really like it because Pal's one of my favorite characters. I talk about that all the time, but this didn't really do it for me.
Would you like it more if he was Australian? If he was talking about shrimp on the Barbie, would you be more for the voice?
I don't think so.
If he was like, I'm a dingo and I'm going to eat a baby.
Oh, no, because then I'd be worried about Kate.
That's true.
Anyway, that's their voices, and that's the conceit of this whole episode. And for many, I wonder if this was kind of an episode where maybe for some kids or people watching, Arthur kind of jumped the shark. I don't know what the reaction was at this time. It didn't ruin anything for me, really. I just thought it was kind of weird when I was a kid. But I can imagine maybe it turning off a couple of viewers who are just like, what, now the baby and the dog are talking? That's dumb. And we definitely get more episodes later on where it's episodes about them. And I will say, this is a way to get more out of those, to make them actual characters instead of having them either be like set dressing essentially or plot points. Because I remember the episode we did where like Pal ran away and was trying to get Kate's balloon. We didn't really like that one, and
I remember distinctly like hating that episode.
Yeah, so I imagine that if you want to get something more out of these characters, make them actual characters, you got to kind of go this way. And although I don't really like Pal's voice as much, after you listen to it for a while, it's fine. It's just not what I initially imagined for that character. So it is what it is, and you get used to it.
Speaking of not liking kids shows, so they're watching a Teletubbies parody. I forget what it's called.
It's called Viddy Boobies.
Viddy Boobies.
Yes.
Which, unlike Ask Frank, I would not recommend you Google Viddy Boobies.
No.
But what's interesting about this that's really funny, actually, I appreciate this joke, is that when so the kids, it's kind of like Peanuts rules, where like Pal and Kate can understand each other, but everybody else sounds like they're talking Simlish.
You know.
Yeah, except it's like Simlish, so it's like blobby gooby, gooby baba, booby videos or whatever it's called. It sounds like the baby talk to DW and Arthur, but when Pal and Kate watch it, it's like poetic. And like you said, philosophical, which is a pretty to be the first thing we see from these characters. Like, even explaining this, I'm like, whew, okay, there's some mental loops. Like, it's kind of mentally taxing to think about it.
I really liked the joke of Viddy Boobies being like secretly Shakespeare, but only like babies can understand it. I thought that was really funny, and they actually use like literally a Shakespeare quote here. From The Tempest, the one that looks like Poe, does that, and I just thought that was really funny. Also, the Viddy Boobies themselves have like, it's again PBS kind of taking the piss out of itself, because we've got one with like the dollar sign, one with the cent sign. They've just got random crap on their heads. I thought it was a very good parody.
I was like weirded out, because I was like, I thought the Love Ducks were sort of the Teletubby stand-in in the Arthur universe, and then DW keeps the continuity by saying she claims Arthur put on Viddy Boobies because of his love for the Love Ducks, and she also says, why don't you just admit it, you're a baby show addict, which is just like a very funny sentence. Can you imagine? I guess you would kind of consider us baby show addicts in a sense.
I'm definitely a baby show addict, big time. I'm proud to admit it. I will say that the plot of this episode's a little thin, because the rest of it is kind of put out with the idea that now we're hearing what Kate and Pal have to say. Kate is, again, very intelligent and philosophic, and Pal just kind of makes, like, what if dogs could talk observations. And depending on how funny you think it is, it'll either make the episode go faster or not. I kind of got tired of it after a while. It's at least with Pal, it's pretty easy joke material.
So they're walking down the street. They're going out for a walk, and then Pal eats a chocolate donut.
Yeah.
Which would kill him.
Yeah.
That would just kill him. He would die. And nobody seems that concerned.
No.
So maybe, I don't know, maybe it was just a vanilla donut and it was dyed chocolate color. But I sound like the CinemaSins guy, but it's just something that I as someone who's now, again, living with a dog, it's something I noticed where I would not be just like, oh yeah, it's cool that my dog ate a chocolate donut.
Pal eats a chocolate donut off the ground, and that should kill him. Ding.
That's incredible. Oh my gosh. How much have you practiced the CinemaSins voice?
I've watched enough videos taking the air out of CinemaSins to know that I hate that voice, and I could do it really well. So, life is a study of contrasts, everybody.
One voice I don't hate, and we've done a lot of talking about voices in this episode. We got a Kate's voice, Pal's voice. Now, let me tell you something, Will.
Yeah.
We get introduced to Nemo.
Yes.
Francine's cat that goes on walks.
Mm-hmm.
And Nemo's voice and characterization, I love it.
So
I love everything about Nemo. He's like an anime villain. Like, he's like Dio from JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Oh
like, he's
God.
awesome.
Oh my God. Yeah, Nemo just goes, Zawarudo.
I can't get enough of him. He's great.
So, regardless of how you feel about Nemo, this is definitely a bit of a character change in itself as well. It's like Nemo is very much like Pal's foil here, whereas when we see Nemo before, he's a pretty agreeable cat, and he and Pal even made friends in Nemo's first episode when he looked very different. So this is a bit of a change here from friendly to villainous, which is a bit harsh. But again, for the sake of making Nemo an actual character, I'm fine with it. And like you said, the voice performance is really good. Nemo, his voice is so oily. I was talking about Alan Rickman earlier, and this is like an American take on kind of the Alan Rickman delivery of just like like, do you normally eat things out of the trash? Like, I bet the voice actor had a lot of fun recording Nemo. Like, it's good. It's good. Like, it's, as far as direction goes, it's pretty good.
I am excited. Oh gosh, like Nemo has this line where he's like, "Cats don't have masters, just good friends."
Yeah.
And it's like, man, I am a big. If Nemo keeps this up in the future Pal and Kate episodes, like you said, there are some. He might be in my like Hall of Fame of like up there with like Mr. Ratburn and Binky and stuff. For me, I know that this is just a me thing, but like for some reason, I can't get enough of my man's evil Nemo.
Yeah, I certainly hope it's not the last we see. So the big conflict of this episode after they get back home is that Dad is making a wedding cake for Mr. Crosswire's, I think, nephew?
There's a great bit of character work here. Every time, I just noticed this stuck out to me. So every time Arthur's dad refers to Mr. Crosswire, of course he calls him Ed Crosswire because they're adults and that's how adults talk about each other. But I thought it was a nice realistic touch. Like in some cartoons he would just call him Mr. Crosswire because that's what we know him as. But it's just, it adds realism to hear Arthur's dad be like, "Oh, Ed's gonna be pissed."
Yeah. So as Dad says, Ed Crosswire is half his business, so he really needs to impress him and find this wedding cake topper, and
which seems unsustainable.
But
like I feel like his catering business, it's one of two things, right? Either his catering business is not as successful as I had considered it to be originally, and Arthur's mom is doing some heavy lifting with her accounting finances, or Ed Crosswire just needs that much catering.
I wouldn't be surprised. I imagine that Ed Crosswire throws quite a lot of bashes and probably gets a sweet deal by going with like a local caterer, and they probably have like a whole model kind of worked out. So it actually doesn't surprise me too much, especially with somebody who is as rich as Ed Crosswire is. Anyway, we see immediately that the cake topper is under the table, and how Dad didn't look there, I'll never know, but he's very stressed, and so maybe just mistook it for a toy, because there's a lot of DW's toys are on the floor as well, so he probably just assumed it was one of those or something. He's frantic at this point. He's just looking absolutely everywhere for this cake topper because he needs it. Like he spent all night specifically designing it to look like the bride and groom.
One thing I like about the way this episode does this, because it is kind of a gimmicky Arthur episode, not dissimilar to say the one where we're looking from Arthur's perspective and he does the marathon. But one thing I like about the way they execute upon this, because like you said, and I know you got a little bit tired of like, okay, Pal just basically speaks in, "Oh, what if a dog could talk?" And Kate's kind of philosophical, but they do go in and out of the baby and the dog's perspective and then contrast that with the adult's perspective.
Yeah.
So it's not just like this there is a universe out there where this episode is literally like everybody's doing Simlish the entire episode.
Yeah.
And that would be whatever problems you had, that would be way, 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 way worse. And get old way quicker, I find. So I think it's fun to sort of we keep getting this juxtaposition of like, okay, this is what the baby and the dog saw, and then this is how the adults perceive the situation.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, they do make the most of it as they can. Like Kate almost grabs it under the table, but then Mom takes her upstairs for a nap, and it's like, "Mother, now is not the time. Father is in trouble, and I must help." And then from Kate's perspective, Katie, like. You know, you're right. It could be a lot worse in terms of how they tell the story. And then Pal has a joke of like, "Goodbye, dearest Kate. You'll only be gone for an hour, but it'll feel like 7 to me." And like, yeah, you're a dog. So Kate tasks Pal with finding the thing and bringing it to Dad. Again, he complains quite a bit. He's just like picks it up in his mouth and just like, "Ugh, almond paste." And we get a thing here where Kate doesn't really know. She knows that the wedding cake topper is important, but she doesn't know what it's for because she's a baby. She lacks pretty much all context. So she thinks that if they put the bride and groom on top of the cake, that every adult in the world will turn into a baby, and that's how we will achieve peace on Earth. And we get a cut here to like her imagining everybody at the wedding, including like Mr. Crosswire, Mom and Dad, like all turning into babies. And she's like, the lion will lay down with the lamb, and the something, the this and that, like, and there will be peace on Earth.
This is just odd.
Yeah.
This is just like strange. Like I mean, I guess it's kind of fun, but it's like I didn't know what to make of it.
I know what you mean.
It's so weird.
Yeah, they really had to
like the way they put the statue on the cake and it like lowers down and like activates this sort of ray of light that turns everyone into a baby. It's just so strange.
Yeah, you're right. It's almost hard to really know what to say about it. I agree with you there, Lucas, for sure. Speaking of strange, man, like again, Pal being a dog, he's very focused on food. He thinks about food a lot. Like Arthur pours him some chicken feast and he gets hungry, but he's also trying to think about his mission to get the cake topper. So Arthur tempts him with a bit of bacon, and we cut to Pal's imagination, and he has like a Fred Astaire dance number where he's singing I'm in heaven, like.
Okay, so it's what's crazy about this. So, and Family Guy would have been on the air around this time, and people often compare this episode. I've heard this comparison in the Discord, and I've also heard this comparison just on the internet. It's like people compare the Pal and Kate episodes to sort of the Stewie and Brian adventures that happen on Family Guy. And I mean, in the sense that they're kind of pretty dissimilar in that, like, that's a regular B plot or A plot on Family Guy episodes, where this is kind of a lot more weirder and a lot more like, it's definitely Stewie and Griffin are just kind of characters. They might as well just be adults, where these characters are definitely like different from everybody else. But this is the one territory where like this goes full Seth MacFarlane. Like Fred Astaire dance number is definitely like, it just reminds me of like, Stewie dancing with what is it? Is it Gene?
Yeah. Oh god.
You know what I'm talking about?
Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly.
Yeah, Stewie dancing with Gene Kelly. Like Seth MacFarlane is a big fan of like show tunes and musicals, and he kind of incorporates that here and there. Where like usually the rest of his stuff is very pop culture-y and very not good. IMO.
No, and
that's neither here nor there. But he does like his kind of show tunesy theatrical stuff, and he always sprinkles that into his show because you can tell that like he's a big fan of that kind of old-timey, old Hollywood stuff. And for some reason, like, of all the things they incorporated here, which is kind of a weird coincidence for the one thing to be, like, always compared to Stewie and Brian's adventures, they also incorporate sort of like a Family Guy joke.
And it's also not nearly as indulgent as those parts in Seth MacFarlane comedies usually come across. But yeah, it's like Pal in a top hat and jacket and cane dancing with an anthropomorphic slice of bacon. It looked a lot like Sausage Party to me, which and he's singing, heaven, I'm in heaven, and imagines him eating the bacon. But then Kate calls for help, and it kind of snaps him out of it before he can actually eat the bacon, because DW accidentally put the bride and groom into her into like her barn thing, and she carries her toys in,
and she gives Kate Larry the Lemon, which I'd like to know more about Larry the Lemon.
I've always
also
wondered.
Weird thing. Oh, sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I always wondered.
Oh, about Larry the Lemon?
Yeah.
Me too, Will. I wonder about Larry the Lemon too. They also use a custom scene transition for specifically when they mention Larry the Lemon. Like, a bunch of lemons go on the scene during the sideswipe, and it's like, of all of the things, like, why for this?
It's like the strawberry transition in the episode about the strawberry cookies.
I'll have to remember to see if they use the lemons ever again, because it's like, that's a lot of work if you're just going to be like, oh, they mentioned the lemons.
So Pal tries taking the cake topper to Dad, but he doesn't want to pay attention to him, so Pal gets a little offended, brings it somewhere else, and then eats the strip of bacon, but due to the juxtaposition of kind of how close together everything was, like Arthur saw him with the cake topper, everybody thinks that Pal ate the bride and groom. So Dad is mortified. Dad and Mom are going to go to the wedding to apologize to Ed and explain to him, so not to get around it. And
Arthur has this great line. I love it when not since there was the threat of Pal being sent away to a barn have the stakes been so high, because Arthur goes, Pal, bud, do you want to go for a walk? It might be our last.
Yeah, because he doesn't know what kind of trouble Pal might be in. But so as they're taking the catering van to the wedding, Kate again tasks Pal to bring the wedding topper, and so Pal breaks away. He still has his leash on, and he really runs after the catering van. And along the way, he gets snagged on a fence, which is the same fence that he was talking to Nemo at earlier. and we see Nemo there, who proceeds to gloat over him as Pal is stuck in the fence and he needs to get to the wedding, and he's begging Nemo to help him. And again, Nemo, very Bond villain here, just like, well, what can you do for me? Maybe you'll be my scratching post for a week. And then he just goes, beg. And
see, this is where Nemo passed the Rubicon for me, where I was like, I love Nemo.
Yeah.
I love him.
And there is a great reading here from Pal, just, you're a cruel beast. And he swallows his pride and he begs, and Nemo just yucks it up. He loves it. And I do like the directions that Nemo gives him. It's just like, turn left at the bakery smell, turn right at the laundry smell, then go until you you hit the scent of new money on how to get to the crosswires.
Yeah, that's another really good joke that probably like a kid would not pick up on.
So Pal does indeed get to the van before Ed Crosswire can see the cake. He gives the topper to Kate, and she manages to fling it backwards exactly onto the pedestal. As like,
while this is happening, we get Arthur's dad is like desperately trying to explain what's happened, and I love it when Arthur's dad is just like flustered, like he's a character where, like, again, like many fatherly figures in cartoons, he's usually the voice of reason, he's usually giving advice, but he's really funny when he's like losing it, like not since remember when his souffle deflated and he was like all distraught. That was hilarious. And similarly here, where he's like desperately, earlier in the episode, Arthur's mom suggests that he just tells him the truth, and he completely disregards her advice, because he's like making up this story where he's like, at the last minute I was like, why don't we go for something a little bit more minimal? And he's like looking around the party, and he's like, who wants a couple on the cake? We could just put a rose. And he like grabs a rose from a bush. Like, he's completely unhinged, just motor mouth. And Mr. Ratbird is like, I don't like it. Mr. Crosswire, excuse me. Mr. Crosswire's like, I don't like it. And then, of course, Kate sinks she's Steph Curry with the statue, because it lands on the cake, and he says, I love it.
And so they get to, Kate, Pal, and the Reeds get to stay at the wedding. Kate's a little upset, though, because she really thought that back to the thing of when she put the topper on, she figured that it would turn everybody into babies. But then Pal says, well, look around. Everybody is acting like babies.
Yeah, it's like they're all drunk. Of course they're acting like babies.
Mr. Crosswire, there's a great shot of him, like, he doesn't have his blazer on anymore. He's got a top hat on, and he's shaking maracas. He is 3 sheets, my dude. He is.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Crosswire's having a time.
This is like, we're definitely going to get a couple of those in a couple months when we get to my wedding here.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
Hey, who knows? It could be you.
That's you know what? Chances are probably would be. Probably sans the top hat, though. I don't know if I could make that work.
Yeah, you'll have to bring the maracas on your own. Like, so they're acting silly, and they're sharing their food. Like, the bride and groom eat the cake topper together, and then it's just like it's just a little bit of a lame ending, as they literally do like the Looney Tunes. That's all, folks. Like, and Kate's like, I guess we're not so different after all.
Okay, there would have been a lame ending, except we finally got our throwaway character of the week.
Okay, I guess I know who it is, but I'm eager to have you explain why.
The throwaway character of the week this week, there wasn't. I was really worried. Again, I thought there wasn't going to be a throwaway character. But luckily, we have the groom, Ed Crosswire's nephew. He bites into the cake topper and says, tastes like chicken?
Yeah.
That was enough, because there was no other choices. At first I was confused. I was like, why the hell does he think it tastes like chicken? Is he insane? It's made with almond paste. But then I realized it was sitting in Pal's food bowl.
Oh.
And it's probably crusted with like chicken flavored dog food. Either way, it's a ridiculous scenario, and it's almost even funnier knowing that it has so much dog food particle on it, it tastes like chicken. And so the fact that dude put it in his mouth so excitedly is what has earned him the honor of being the throwaway character of the week.
Do you know something? I totally didn't even put that together until you kind of did it for me. So
I did a lot of thinking about it, because at first I was just like, this is absurd. Why would almond paste taste like chicken? And then I really thought long and hard about it, and I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Which is, if I had to think about that much to figure out that joke, I'm sure it went over 99% of people's heads.
And that's a wrap there on easily one of the stranger episodes of Arthur. So before we can really give our thoughts on that one, let's rewind it back to Prunella's Special Edition. How did this one strike you?
So, Prunella's Special Edition, I don't have, strong feelings about it. I'm not a big Harry Potter guy, so a lot of the Harry Potter, parody stuff, mileage may vary as far as that's concerned with me. But I did think it's notable in that I didn't mind Prunella so much, and I kind of like how it's pretty much at the halfway point of the episode she meets her just desserts for being annoying, and sort of the rest of the episode is her kind of coming to terms with the fact she's not going to read the book, and then she meets her new friend. So I liked that she wasn't the Prunella I don't like the whole episode, and we kind of even see in this episode, in this self-contained story, some growth from Prunella, so I thought that was positive. I wasn't sure about, again, it's Marina, right?
Yes.
I wasn't sure about the introduction of Marina. I kind of wish she was introduced a little bit earlier in the episode. She's kind of used as a deus ex machina here, in that it's she shows up and is immediately Prunella's friend and offers to read to her. I know that they were probably they had to convey that in a very short amount of time. So I understand why they did it that way, but I don't know. I'm excited to see more from that character and see her develop as more of a character instead of just kind of a plot device to solve Prunella's problem. That being said, it sounds like I'm really critical of the episode, but I'm not. There was a lot, even though it didn't really resonate with me, all the Harry Potter parody stuff is pretty funny and very creative, especially all the stuff with the vegetables. AskFrank.com is so awesome. It needs to be mentioned again. But yeah, I don't know. I think this episode's just kind of okay. I don't see it as one that I would return to or necessarily recommend unless you're a big Harry Potter person. But I don't think it's a bad episode at all. I think it's quite good, actually.
Yeah, I think with the theme with both of these episodes is that it kind of brings some characters forward into the light a little bit, and it means we're kind of introducing stuff that we will continue to play with along the line, which is good for such a long-lived show like Arthur. We get introduced to new characters. We have kind of new personality traits for existing characters. And with Prunella here, I'm always glad to have a character that I'm not so hot on or even just kind of indifferent about get more time to get invested in them or not. I did appreciate the Harry Potter references. I think they did a really good job kind of making Henry Screever its own while also, of course, throwing back to the very real phenomenon that was going on at the time. And I thought that the story itself was, it was kind of interesting. Prunella gets a Braille version of ostensibly a Harry Potter book and then ends up making a new friend out of it. So it's kind of interesting. It doesn't go where you think that it might. I'm also really excited for Marina to be more of a character, to see more of her and Prunella kind of interact with each other. And yeah, I end up being pretty positive on this episode as well. It's just, I don't know if it's it's not I loved watching it or something, but I think it has a lot of kind of positive implications going ahead into not just this season, but the rest of the series. So the secret life, of dogs and babies. This was as weird as, this was as strange to the overall context of Arthur as people kind of built it up to be, and it's even weirder kind of coming at it from an adult's perspective of just okay, we are clearly entering into a new kind of era in terms of the stories that Arthur is telling, because we're giving these two, Kate and Pal, really not characters at all, more just almost props at some points in terms of Kate. So we're actually giving them characters, and they will get their own episodes. We will delve further into this. I imagine that could definitely lose some people. For me, I'm open to it, as much as I may not like Pal's voice. Like I said, I did kind of warm up to it by the end, and it's fine. It's just kind of not what I would expect, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. The episode itself, we both kind of said, it's pretty light on plot, and it's just kind of more a vehicle to get across the idea of both of their gimmicks, essentially. And I think that's fine. I'm open to there being episodes further down the line where they actually kind of get more to chew on in an episode. So this was fine, and it's definitely a curiosity in the overall Arthur canon. It's it's the episode where Kate and Pal start talking, and that's really And there's even more kind of strange stuff in there too, from Larry the Lemon to the dance sequence to video.
The Rugrats opening. Let's not forget about the Rugrats opening.
Rugrats and Viddy Boobies. It's a real curio, and so definitely worth a watch just for like curiosity's sake alone.
Yeah, we've talked about this before, but weirdness goes a long way with me. I always tend to like the more high concept out there Arthur episodes. So I think like me personally, like I really enjoyed The Secret Life of Dogs and Babies. Just like being, what bizarre thing are they going to show me next? Like the Rugrats parody took me completely by surprise, as did Viddy Boobies. And like, I don't know. I liked Kate's characterization. I'm happy they did more with Kate than just the same thing they did with Pal, in that she kind of is like, she's kind of granola, and she's kind of like like she's looking for sort of this John Lennon, like everybody should be a baby and peace on earth.
Yeah.
It's a weird angle to take, and I appreciated the weirdness of it. And I think at least with this episode, the novelty had not yet worn off with, look, they're talking. It's Pal and Kate, and they're talking. Isn't this weird? So I enjoyed it, at least for this episode, and I'm interested to see where they take it in the future. Also, we forgot about the dance sequence. Remember the dance sequence? There's so much weird stuff in this episode. And I have to just say, like, for some reason, I can't get enough of my man Nemo. Like, he's sick. I love it. I love Nemo. I liked Nemo even when he didn't talk and he was just Binky's friend that was a weird cat that went on walks, which is strange enough already. But now that he's like Hans Gruber, I cannot wait to see my friend Nemo again. So I would say I actually really, really enjoyed this episode.
He really is kind of like Kitty Hans Gruber, isn't he?
Kitty Hans Gruber, say no more.
All right, well, that's going to do it for us here at Elwood City Limits. Thank you, everybody. Sorry to keep you waiting for this. Unfortunately, we may get a few more interruptions along the way. We're both pretty busy. I mean, Lucas with his school schedule. Me, I've got a wedding coming up, for goodness sakes. So it's a pretty tumultuous 2019, but we're happy to be able to record when we can. Of course, you can follow us over on social media. We'll try and keep you informed as to what's going on from week to week. Posting up more of those memes as well on Instagram as well, Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr,
and
Instagram.
Again, if you're a Patreon subscriber, no matter what, if we miss a week, we've been pretty good at keeping up with the filibusters. And I've been liking if you ever want to hear our take on stuff that's other than Arthur, I know we get on topic on this episode, on these episodes from time to time. But we really get off topic with the filibusters. If you want to hear, for instance, Will talk about what he's been watching lately or playing, like Resident Evil 2. Or if you want to hear me talk about the new Vampire Weekend album or stuff like that, or anime, the Filibuster is your place to listen to that kind of content, and it's all on the Patreon.
And for our patrons as well, we really want to say a big thank you from the both of us. It's really awesome to have this little community we've collected. Don't be shy over on the Discord. We'd really love to hear from you. Start a conversation or join.
I've been busy with school. I got to get back into the Discord. I love the Discord, and I promise I'll try and post there a little bit more. I've just been swamped lately.
And I keep saying it, and I really do apologize with how busy my schedule's been. I still haven't really figured out streaming yet, or even like just playing games together. Hopefully, we kind of have loose plans within the Discord to do Jackbox sometime soon. So I'm hoping I can kind of figure out exactly how that's going to work for the group. And if you would like to join in on any potential group games or anything like that, again, all it takes is $1 a month over at Patreon. But really, we are very thankful for every single donor we have over there. And even if you're not a patron, we are very thankful for giving us your time week after week. And we're very glad to be doing this show for you. So coming up on the next full edition of Elwood City Limits, Season 6 continues on. And in fact, we may be joined by a special guest for Muffy's Soccer Shocker and Brother, Can You Spare a Clarinet?
Ooh, more on that next week.
Yeah, or whenever you hear from us next. Thank you so much for allowing us to be part of your week. My name's Will Young, and for Lucas Mancini.
That's the longest book I've ever read. 473 pages. Actually, it's 474 if you count the dedication.
We will see you next time on Elwood City Limits. Have a great week.